Alrighty, hello everyone. Let me see if I can find my headphones. Cohist says noise. It is noise, isn't it? Right. Welcome everyone. Nice to see some people around. Hello Tutu. Welcome back. Let's see if we can get the old machine set up here properly. Get rid of some icons. So, what's going on, everyone? Today we're gonna do some level design, I figured. Now that I finally have this area done here to a somewhat satisfactorily level, I need to turn my attention to the rest of the level, quite frankly. And right, so I will need to actually turn off light maps here, which is a little sad, but that's just because we will be working on an area outside of this rectangle here, which is not light mapped, and stuff can look really bad here outside of it. Here they just look like a little darker. You can see the border right here, but they can look actually completely wrong or terrible. So I'm just gonna disable the light mapping for now, which in turn means that some of the things here inside of the light mapped area won't look correct, but I'm not gonna spend a lot of time here anyway, so that's probably fine. Now, since the last stream that we spent in this level, I've been doing a lot of modeling of this sort of surrounding cliffs and all of that stuff here. I don't know if you remember what it used to look like, but it used to be kind of ugly. And the idea here is that we have this huge elevator thingy here, which one of these days I'm going to remodel properly. This is sort of an elevator thingy, and the elevator thingy is essentially sort of the end of this level. It's the target. So it will move the player up here onto this plateau. And there will be some more background things here in the distance that sort of gives you a hint of the direction you need to go, etc., etc. But the takeaway here is that you're coming from this big plane here, which this area is obviously completely untextured, uncolored even, one might say. Big plane. And you're coming here to the edge of this big plateau, and so I've done essentially all of this background stuff here, trying to make this look like it is in fact a part of a big plateau. And I went a little crazy. I just spent like the past 3 days or so essentially just modeling all of these cliffs. They're completely new. You see that the place here where I actually started, because this side is like textured, UV unwrapped and textured and all of that. It's very simple, of course. There's might even be a little difficult to see the difference here. But one important thing is that this can be light mapped because it is properly UV unwrapped. The stuff here on the other side, this is completely single colored. It's not UV unwrapped. It's not even proper like final geometry probably. You can see the edge right here where the coloring stops, essentially. Just one big piece. Woo. Like so. And we have the next piece over there. And so on. And yeah, that's kind of the idea. A little annoyed at my frame rate here. Let's see if we can actually get VSync working. I'm currently using the same UV space for the colors and the light map. Yes, you can select the light map based on like if you have several light if you have several UV maps in your mesh data. You can have one for the color maps. You can have a second one for light map data, for example. The engine doesn't generate any light map UV for you specifically. I think Unity, for example, I've never done light mapping in Unity, but if I understand it correctly, it uses like the second one, so UV1 for the light mapping, and generates like UV light mapping UV coordinate or light map UV coordinates on that channel, then uses that. You can very easily do that in Blender and just tell the basis engine to hey use UV1 instead. But I typically don't use overlapping UVs, and so just for simplicity I tend to use the first one. Yes. What was I gonna do? I was gonna look here for the VSync thing. Where's VSync here? FreeSync, pixel format. Here we go. Off unless application specifies. Okay, so it should be. It should be all right. Let's try that again. You're using only for the color maps that blend between textures, not to have that detail resolution. I'm not exactly sure what you mean. Oh, not that, and not that either. One might say that there isn't much detail in these maps. One might say that indeed. Of course, if we go and look at like the light mapping debug information, you can see that they're actually, well, the light maps are actually pretty low resolution, at least this far, because I've tried to actually generate these pretty quickly. Might have to bump that up. But you can use this, I mean, it's just a normal UV space. You can definitely use them for detail information as well. Which of course I do in some cases, like this has a little, it's fairly single colored as well, but this house is probably one of the places that has like the most detail. But yeah, it's pretty single colored as well. So yeah, it's just a normal like diffuse. You can put a diffuse texture there, for example, if you want to, or an albedo or whatever you want to call it. What am I using for my app UI? If you mean this editor UI, it's just WinForms. It's just C# WinForms. So essentially Win32. Just very basic stuff. Okay, so now we have VSync on. Let's hope this is a little less choppy than it was previously. Anyway, right. So yes, we have this sort of mountainside here which is not really finished, I would say, but it's approaching, and the colored and everything. And OBS is doing something funky, but let's see. I've opened up this side considerably, right? This used to be sort of, your view used to be blocked here, and I figured, hey, we have this big plane here on this side, where you can potentially, you can see like the previous level there in the distance. Let's open this up quite a bit, and I've done that, so we have this sort of small place here where you have like almost like a window out onto the big field. Obviously everything is just like incorrect colors here. It's supposed to be a green grassy field, at least mostly green brown perhaps. And here you can see a little bit of the terrain, that's green. Then you have a piece of the mesh here, which is using this almost white color now, and then this checkerboard textured, this is really just like one big plane. That's not how it's probably going to remain. You can also see that the depth is kind of funky here, because this is rendered using distant object render pass, which is why we get like a 10 kilometer viewing distance or something here. And this is actually where the terrain ended. The terrain ended here. You can see the edge of the terrain there. So I just slapped a mesh onto this. Didn't even bother with the correct color. But anyway, we have this new mesh here, which is essentially like this whole piece of the cliff, which I just modeled earlier today. Also sort of placeholdery. So the interesting thing here is, of course, that you're never supposed to go out onto the plane, right? The level is not really, there's nothing really there. It's just supposed to be interesting. You arrive from the plane, from over here. But there's really nothing out there, and you can't drive back there, at least in the first iteration of the game. And so what do you do in a game like this, where you can just like lift, you can use the mother vehicle's crane to like lift the player anywhere. So I came up with this solution here, where you have, let's try this a little bit. Okay, let's answer these questions in order. So looks great. Thank you very much. It is starting to look pretty nice, at least these places that now have grass. How many people are working on this game? That would be one. That would be me. And what do I mean with distant object render pass? The distant object render pass is a render pass that's separate from the opaque objects. So normally you render the opaque objects in like a front to back order, and you render the transparent passes in a back to front order, things like that. Pretty normal stuff. I have a distant object render pass which sets up the near and far distances completely differently, because a depth buffer has non-uniform value distribution, which I'm sure many of you will know. And that means that if you move the near plane of the camera just a little bit away, let's say you have like a near plane of 10 units or maybe 20 units or something, you can essentially move your far distance like way further away without having any Z fighting issues or anything like that. So I have essentially two render passes that I typically use to render the solid objects in the game. So there's the normal opaque one, there's the far distant object one. For example, you can see this moon here, and these clouds. They are actually objects. They're just rendered using the distant object. render pass, and so you have a typical normal opaque render pass, which has, I think the near distance is like 0.1 world units or something like that, right? So you can get like 10 centimeters from the surface, and then it cuts away. And then the far distance is probably like 1,000 or 1,500 units or something like that. And then the distant object render pass uses something like I don't know exactly what I have it set to currently, but probably like 10 or 20 meters or world units. And then the far distance is just like ridiculously long. But because they use different because they use sort of different depth distributions, you can't really render them in the same depth pass. They would just, all kinds of things would go wrong. So that's why in certain places where you have distant objects and regular opaque object intersecting, I made it so that the opaque objects, they just always render on top of the distant objects. So that's why you have this weird effect here where actually sort of the plane here is probably actually higher than it looks. It looks like it's kind of low down because this thing is on top of it, but it's actually much closer to, like, we're now at the height of that plane, right? Yeah, so they both use depth testing, depth riding, but you can't compare a distant object depth value to an opaque pass depth value, basically. Anyway, what I was saying earlier is that, like, you have this area here, and this looks kind of interesting, I guess, or I'm hoping it will look interesting later on when we get all of this texture and we get grass and trees and things added to the place. But then you have this mother vehicle, and indeed the whole point of the game is to reach areas by just using this vehicle to, like, lift smaller vehicles into a place. So if I don't want people to go out onto the plane, what do I do? And I was thinking I would model this cliff like this. So basically you have like a first blocker here, which is like, you don't want this cliff to be super high, or otherwise the plane and all of the nice things, the ambient things there, won't be actually visible, right? You want to make it pretty low. That means that people can most likely lift the vehicle up over this initial hurdle here. And then we quite frankly need to have a second one which is further away. So if someone really wants to go driving on top of this, there probably won't be like a lot. Maybe I'll put some like hidden extras or something here, right? Oh, I haven't set up the physics correctly, so you can't drive on this. Let's fix that. But yeah, if you let's see, that needs to be default ground, and now we should be able to drive on top of it. And we can just spawn a vehicle right here. Let's put a scout here. And this is kind of just like a hodgepodge of things here. You have you have many different colored terrain here currently. Same thing goes for this. Same thing goes for that, yeah. Let's make that default ground. Right. So if someone wants to go driving on that, they should be able to do that, but there should be like a logical reason for why they can't drive out onto the plane there. And that reason is then this second sort of barrier here, essentially consisting of these natural cliff formations. And of course the reason you can't go there is because you can't really lift the mother vehicle up onto this level. So that's why this cliff here, as it approaches this place, it needs to be pretty high, so you can't just like immediately, you can't lift one of the scouts, for example, from down there up onto that highest level. Because if they could, then there would be nothing stopping them from just driving out onto the plane. Things like that. Yeah, we'll see. I'm sort of going through this area here in my head as I explain it to you, because this is relatively new stuff. But we can run a script here. Actually, it's from here, remove the smokestack, so we can just drive up onto the refinery level. And I think this is starting to look pretty nice, or I can sort of imagine it looking pretty nice when we have it decorated fully, because this is a kind of interesting visual with those mountains there in the very distant view. So that's kind of nice, I guess. But anyway, I was thinking we could maybe do something about this side here now. I was hoping we could use one of those cliffs that I made earlier for that. So we have a few here. Now these guys are basically made for like this side of the level, where they're sort of modeled in place, and it is possible that we won't find any single cliff that fits this. I have cliffs for most of the places now. I think there might be one, might need to be one over here, and there will most likely be one over here. And then we're basically done with this level's cliffs, I guess. But it would be nice if we could just use one of these guys here. Actually, let's look. Where are the? Oh, it's right there. Let's put it under the cliff folder. And none of this really seemed to necessarily be all that fitting. This has like a very kind of pretty long and slight roundness to it. We don't really have those kinds of cliffs here. So we could maybe do that. And that could be kind of interesting. This place is supposed to have sort of a almost like a ramp running up over here, so that you can essentially back up the mother vehicle here if you want to lift a car past this blockade here. I do send a part of the terrain to Blender. Yes, I do that. I can show you how it works. Let's turn on a Blender instance here. So I have something called Blender Sync, which is like a plugin. You start the server here, and this is now the dedicated Blender instance that will serve our purposes. And we probably activate the blockout cliffs parent there, and we add something called a quick mesh to the scene. And now we need to sort of think about, okay, where's the center roughly going to be if we're interested in this part of the level, where's the center for this going to be? So let's put it like roughly over there. That's not going to be exactly where the cliff is, but that doesn't matter. Because now we can quite simply include the surroundings, and we can try out like a 200, but that includes like the whole refinery. We don't need that, so let's make it a smaller one, like 100. That looks all right, but we're kind of interested in this road though, so let's make it a little larger, like so. It actually cuts out like a square part of the level. This is just visualized as a sphere because it's just easiest that way. And I would just click edit in Blender. You can see that it exports the surrounding objects, takes a second or two, and boom, look at that. We have the object here in Blender. We can turn on random colors, which is pretty handy because with the Blender sync system, the object that we actually want to modify here is called Blender sync target, and that's, you're not supposed to change that name actually. That is sort of how it identifies what are you working with. And the surroundings object is supposed to be called this. If you re-import it and make some changes and then bring it over again, it will of course have just recreated that object. So it's not as important. But Blender sync target is the name that you should keep for this object. And if you do that and you turn on random colors, and it gives that a nice blue color and the rest of the scene a nice yellow color. So that's pretty cool. And now we can just mess around with this guy. You can do anything. Like we can put out like a giant monkey head here, for example, like that, and we can rotate it around X maybe. Bring it up like this, and then if you're like, okay, I want to see what this looks like in the editor now, you can either finish editing or you can update and keep editing. Update and keep editing just sends the stuff over, but it keeps this scene open here in Blender. Well, and there's our monkey head. So it's really super fast to do, and that's how I modeled basically everything here in this level, to be honest. Not like individual. Let's finish this for now. Just to give you an example, I can just click this guy here, which is also a quick mesh. You can see that it has a pretty big surroundings radius. You can just click edit in Blender, and you get basically, it takes a few seconds to do it the first time, but then of course you don't have to keep re-importing if you don't want to. And you can see that now we are effectively editing this, and you get everything here, all the vehicles, all the houses, everything. So that's pretty cool. Did you see some other engine with the workflow? There's a whole video about it on the channel if you wanna know more about the Blender sync system. It's not terribly complicated, to be honest. It basically just does the export and import, sends it back and forth. Really what I wanted at the time was like a pro builder thing, like in Unity. You can model directly in the editor, and because I just didn't have time to do that, I made this instead. And I kind of like this better now, to be honest, because Blender's editor is just the best, in my opinion. So it is pretty nice. I'm not gonna claim otherwise. But yeah, you can then decide here if you want to actually send the data back, one of these buttons, or then just cancel it. You can create a helpers collection, which is this Blender sync helpers here. If you put anything in here, it's a signal to the system that, hey, I want this object to be sort of stored. I want it to be sort of sent back and forth, because this data is now stored inside the level data in the level editor. So if you put some other object there, you know, let's say I want like a, I I don't know, monkey here. And for some reason I want this monkey. This monkey is important. I want it to hang around in this file. I can keep this Blender Sync helpers collection here, and it will just keep anything in there. Won't actually do anything about it. But all the other objects are then removed so that your stuff doesn't get cluttered. Well, let's not have any more of those. Anyway, let's go back to our monkey head here in the slope. So we don't want to do that, obviously. We want to edit in Blender, and now we can just take all of this and remove that. And in fact, we will probably remove everything. The way I typically do these cliffs is that I look at it from above. And let's refocus everything. So we're like looking at the very center of the Blender file, which is not the same as the world center. Like this is just a piece of the data, a piece of the level that's brought into the Blender file and placed at the center of the Blender file. The center of the Blender file is where you should, or where it sort of makes sense. I don't need to, but where it usually makes sense to bring these Blender Sync targets in. And we can do an X-ray. We can adjust the X-ray a little bit so we can see through the background a little bit. And you can see sort of the road here. So we want the cliff to kind of, it should probably start around here, and then I'm wondering about this place here. Might be that we have to cut this up into 2 pieces, just so that the player can back the mother vehicle up until here, or then they will approach from this right side. That's also possible. But typically what I do anyway is I take the knife tool, and it's a pretty good thing to have another cliff in here. You have another cliff here, for example, and then obviously you have cliffs here on this refinery side as well. You want the overall size of the details to be like the same, otherwise the scale will be just completely wrong. Let's move this side over, and then we can just start from here. And then I just quite simply start adding these kinds of cliff details here. And I will just actually, I think I will actually just cut into this place here, and we can figure out what we do about this ramp later. For now the player won't be able to drive up here. They can drive up from the other side, and then we can just go in and modify this later if we need to. That's probably okay. Something like this. It doesn't exactly matter how you do this. I have this sort of like pretty loose zigzag or zigzag pattern that I typically use when doing these cliffs, and you sort of vary it a little bit, and it's typically quite okay after you massaged it a bit. Something like that. So now we can just cut away these two guys. Just bye-bye. And we're not interested in all of this area that this now brings us. So we can immediately do a little bit of trimming of this plane here. Probably something like this, maybe. And we can get rid of this guy here. So now we might want to turn off the X-ray just to get a slightly better idea of how this works. And typically what I do is I bring it down to like sort of like the lowest level, and then I extrude it upwards, and you get something that looks like this. not very nice looking so far. We can update and keep editing. Right, so this is what we get. And we can see here that, okay, we're ending at roughly the correct place. This is where it starts to sort of rise. Might not actually need to have it go all the way there, but that might be kind of okay. So yeah, let's keep going. And now what I typically do is I do a bunch of loop cuts. And then I do an insert of this top. So you want to do an insert. And at some point, if you insert enough, you're going to get these intersecting surfaces and everything is going to go to hell. So just insert until you're just about reaching that point. And we can just go in and edit this. Get rid of the surroundings for a bit. And you just want like a little bit off the top side so that you can then later you can match it nicely with the terrain. You don't need all of this top side, and that is why you're actually going to get rid of almost everything. First of all, the bottom we can get rid of immediately. This stuff we can get rid of immediately. Probably, maybe, yeah. Let's do maybe one more insert. And because I want to do one more insert, I want to keep the big face. At least for now. For a few more seconds. Let's bring these guys over. Now we can do one more insert. And we get like another sort of strip of faces there. I didn't just fix that one because again it broke. And now we probably have enough geometry here to work with. So those we can just collapse at the center. And yeah, that looks pretty all right, at least for this early part. Just make sure that we have the faces pointing in the right direction. So now we can bring it over, finish editing for now, and now if I save the level, now this file is stored in the data of the level, in the actual level file. No need to mess around with Blender files or anything at this point. That is probably like my favorite part of this whole Blender sync system, that you don't have to do the manual export, import, blah blah blah, update, pass. So we can see here that okay, this is not exactly matching what we want, but it's a start. We can get a feel here for what this is like to sort of drive around. It's pretty big. It's sort of like annoyingly big. I wasn't really thinking I would do something quite this big. I wonder if we should just cut it off at this point after all. Just like leave this side as just sort of a slope. Yeah, this part will get pretty steep. Doesn't look very natural if we leave it like that. And we don't have much space actually here. This is getting pretty narrow. So let's keep it as it is. Actually, no, let's not keep it as it is. I'm going to do one iteration on it here before we start making it look more like a cliff. Let's see, I'm going to cut it off at probably like this part here, yeah. So like these faces here. And we can get rid of that part. We don't need that. And then we probably want like these three. And I want to basically bring it inwards, like towards the mountain. This is where the like proportional editing is really handy, but that's actually not the correct place to do the proportional editing, I think. Something like this. Just bring it in. Maybe rotate that a little bit and bring it in some more. Don't triangulate it when exporting. Keep the original. I do triangulate it, yes. I do triangulate it. All of this is explained in the video about the Blender Sync system. But basically, what happens is this surroundings mesh. Well, first of all, I do keep the Blender file around, right? When you finish editing here, it runs through my own custom mesh exporter. So basically I need to tell the system, if we go here and look for Blender Sync, I need to basically give it the path to my mesh converter so that it knows how to take the Blender file and convert it to my own stuff. And that is the mesh that ends up here. How I get the surrounding objects into into the Blender file, that works by exporting this part of it. Collects everything in this within these bounds, and it exports it as an OBJ file. But at that point it doesn't have, it's just a triangle soup, so it doesn't have any indices or anything like that. It's literally just unindexed triangle data. And so if we select this guy and we go into edit mode, you can see that, well, first of all, it's triangulated. Everything is triangulated because this comes directly out of the rendering engine. So there's triangulated faces everywhere. The second thing to note is that if we try to select something and move, oh, I have proportional editing on. You move individual triangles, right? So if we get like that, we want to hit L here and try to select everything. It doesn't know, well, it selected another one, but we can then just move like this one piece of this entire mesh. So what you want to do, if you want to actually like move this around, what you need to do is you need to select everything and you need to merge by distance. And this is going to show us some like ridiculously big number here. Like it's removed 314,800 and something vertices. So now we can select sort of individual parts and move this around like we normally can. And we can, for example, just, you know, take the terrain and just delete the terrain if you want to. Like you want to have these guys here, but you want to not see the terrain. You can do that. But this data that you see here, this comes directly out of the rendering engine. This is not coming from the Blender data. And in fact, when I was developing this, before I specifically excluded them, you would actually get these gizmo arrows in there as well, depending on what you had selected and things like that. So if you close the blend, you can no longer click edit in the editor without having been triangulated. Well, that is basically what happened. No, okay. The triangulation happens in the mesh converter, right? And this is the same mesh converter. If I run my asset browser here And this is like a system for managing all of the files. And we have, what do we have? We have like a Scout chassis FBX file, right? This is basically like this guy, this Scout vehicle. So this consists of a bunch of meshes. One of them is the chassis, which is like 95% of this entire thing. And it is this FBX. If I export to this and I do a basis convert here, you can see that, okay, we converted the FBX file, which you would normally export from Blender. You can see the conversion output here. One of the things that it does is it does the triangulation process. It's using the async library, if you're wondering how it does these things. So it does like a triangulation process here as part of making this bin mesh file that we then can render. And when I click finish editing here, the exe that I showed you earlier in the Blender settings file, that's just a normal mesh converter exe. So it's the exact same file. You can actually see it here. There's the path. This is the same path that we give to Blender, right? So mesh converter does all the triangulation. Nothing leaves Blender without being triangulated. So then when we click edit in Blender here, select this guy and click edit in Blender, what it does is it collects all the stuff in the scene within these bounds except for the actual object itself and things like these arrows here, right? Collects all the other things. They have already been triangulated because the engine doesn't render anything unless it is triangulated. And it just sticks that in a big OBJ file, which is then opened in Blender as like a separate surroundings mesh. And that's all this yellow stuff here. But yeah, nothing gets re-triangulated whenever you click edit in Blender, except for this actual target, which is just exported normally through the mesh converter, right? Hello, Startala. You can actually see the thing here if we convert. This is the Blender console, right? You can see actually the same output here as you can see here on this asset server output. So here's the triangulate process finished thing. Same thing as here somewhere. I lost it. There we are. So it's exactly the same thing. Exactly the same as if I had like exported an FBX file from Blender and then given that to my mesh converter. I hope that makes it clear. But I mean, you can do whatever you want. This is just the way I did it. You can do it however you want, and as long as you you know what you want to do. This may not be the perfect solution for everyone. All right. Let's get back to the issue at hand. So this is looking pretty all right, I think. We need like an end cap to this thing. But we have like a slight slope here, and we don't need this sort of cliff, I guess, to support it. I don't think we do that. So we can essentially keep it this large, I think. We might have brought it a little too close because it's sort of overlapping with the road there. So let's bring it back. Like this big chunk here essentially needs to be brought outwards a little bit. So let's take that, I guess. Can essentially take all of those and then do proportional editing and just move that part out a little bit. Maybe like rotate it more than we actually move it. Something like that. And I think that should be fine. And now there are like a bunch of things that we can use to make this look more like a cliff. Come on. I'm gonna tweak the topography of some of these places a little bit. And I'm really not actually I'm really not a modeler. So a proper artist would probably look at this and laugh, but it kind of works for me, so. So there. Right, so we wanna make this look not as sort of regular as this. So what I typically do is I turn on proportional editing again and just start to sort of pull this in different directions a little bit. Just ever so slightly. Sometimes that's really sort of almost all you need to do, but more often than not that's not enough. It's not quite enough to get the sort of cliff feel. Here where it starts, it needs to sort of lower, it needs to go down there. We can take probably like, let's see, start from this side here and move it down. We want proportional editing on and just grab it downwards, and we get this pretty nice sort of slope here. Might have to do it in like a few steps actually. And then we need to start rotating this. And typically I rotate the sort of this inside inwards a little bit so that it just starts intersecting with the terrain. And then of course we put lots of like grass and stuff, rocks and all kinds of crap on top of it so that you don't see that edge. And another thing that's kind of handy to do is to select some of these lowest, actually I can just turn off this for a second, select some of these lowest edges here, and then with proportional editing on you just start scaling them, but you need to do individual origins for that to make sense, like this. We can move them along the y-axis. This is already kind of starting to get that cliff, a very stylized but still stylized cliff look. Right. And then of course you should regularly go back to the editor because it's so easy to do that. You should regularly go back here and see what it looks like, and probably actually modify the terrain a little bit. But let's see, this looks stupid without like the end cap there. We kind of have an end cap on that side. Let's do something about that. maybe do something like that. And then I think we'll probably do one more like this. And then maybe extrude those guys. Like so. We don't need the underside, so let's get rid of those. We actually don't need the inside either. I think that will look nice when we bring the terrain back. It just kind of nicely steps into the terrain there. Then another thing that you can do to make this look a little more cliffy is to extrude some of these faces, not all of them, but some of these faces a little bit outwards. And this is kind of tricky. Let's add a face cut, or sorry, an edge loop is what I'm trying to say over there. Maybe bring that up and then just extrude these a little bit. So you get these sort of shelves in the cliff that you can then mess around with. You can make them look more cliff-like. Actually, I don't really like this setup here, so let's get rid of that. Whoop. That's not what I wanted. I'm gonna get rid of all of those. Like that. And slowly, this is starting to resemble a cliff. Now we have actually quite a lot of topside here. I think this is probably unnecessarily a bit unnecessarily much, but we'll see. I think we'll want to triangulate this a bit differently, because that means that we can then actually, oh come on, dissolve is what I want. Sort of bring those up a little bit to make it look like a jagged cliff side. What's going on here? This is weird. Okay. Like so, dissolve that as well, dissolve. Something like that. I think in this case we can try to bring this a bit closer into the mountain, to the mountain side. Let's take those, put on proportional, and start moving. Actually, we're quite far from where it intersects with the terrain. That's fine. Right, what do we have here that's actually causing this to look so weird? We have this weird, we can just merge those probably. Oh. Merge at last. Maybe bring that over, but not the whole thing, just that one. Like so. That can be merged. That can be merged. Or actually, what I probably want to do is this thing again. Just simplify the geometry a little bit. Right. So I don't think I'm I'm going to want to do all of this, like finish this cliff today, because I've done so many cliffs now that I'm kind of getting bored of the whole thing. I need a small break, but I'm gonna do this to like a degree where this is usable. in the game, right? So this is the idea is kind of here. We can make it have the same sand material as these other ones. Sand is just the color. They're not supposed to be sand, obviously. And then we can make them physics blockers. So physics tri-mesh, default ground is what we need. That means that we can drive on top of them. And so here I also want to bring this sort of down a little bit. This is where I was thinking that you can drive this mother vehicle, which is this big, up this side, and you can park it here, and you can then lift the vehicle past that blockade if you want to. That is supposed to be one of the things that you are supposed to be able to do. So we are supposed to facilitate that. Proportional again, and just bring it down. Rotate it and bring it down. Down into the terrain. Probably rotate these. And bring them into the terrain a little bit more. Like so. Yeah. Think this looks okay. I wonder if we actually need this second strip of geometry here. Should we just actually try to get rid of this and then just bring the terrain forward enough that it actually not that, but that. That might make more sense. Let's redo that as well. Dissolve. Right, now we have some holes here, but that's fine. We can bring up the terrain enough to actually fix that. I'm gonna probably just uniformly bring down this side ever so slightly. Let's go with maybe that. Bring it down like so. Yeah. That looks all right. And now we can just go in here and start playing around with the terrain editor instead. So do we have any reasonably flat places here? There are some reasonably flat places. So we can record like a height like this, and then we can... oh, I need to untick that. Now we can sort of start to melt the terrain onto this mesh. And now obviously the border between where you have mesh data and where you have height map data is really obvious. Then when we put some decorations, especially the grass is really good at covering this up. The grass system is brand new. I just got it in, and to my delight, I realized that the grass system is actually really good at covering up the border between height map terrain and meshes. So that's really nice. Yeah, and this is kind of tricky to do, especially if we have, oh, here we actually need we need like one more triangle there. Let's put it in. Let's put in one more triangle there. Probably like that. That should be enough, I think. But maybe we could bring down that a little bit. So that one vertex there downwards. Yep. That should be all right. Now we can manage for a while. Yeah, this is kind of tricky work actually to match terrain and meshes together so that it looks nice. And you also get like you get this thing here, right? Where you want terrain on top of this, and it means that it sort of flows down on this side here. And if you want this to be now really sort of quite steep, it may or may not be possible to do that. You can start by trying to erase this here, but since this is a height map, it can't do overhangs. And it can't do things that are almost overhangs in some cases either. This actually looks, I think this looks quite okay. Sometimes when you're sort of erasing grass on the bottom side, you get sort of close enough to the top side and you start erasing the top side as well. And that's obviously not something that you want to do. Oh, we got it working pretty well there. That's fine. Right, so how are we on the plainness of this? It's pretty plainer. I haven't worked on this particular side, this like mountain side or hillside here for almost half a year now, so I don't exactly know how I want this to look, but let's put in this cliff here so that we have something here to then iterate on. And you can see here if I'm not applying this now, but if I move this brush up sort of close enough to the top, you can see that depending on the size of the brush and the fall off and everything that you have set, it sort of starts to appear there above the cliff as well. That's the stuff you need to be careful with, otherwise you're gonna have unintended consequences. All right. So I'm sort of recording a height and then almost like peeling off a layer of terrain here a little bit at a time to see what I can do and what it looks like. But yeah, it takes a little while to get one of this to look nice. I mean, this doesn't look the nicest yet compared to like this one, for example, or not to mention, of course, any of these actually properly textured cliffs here. This is what I was mentioning with the grass. I could actually maybe even put the grass a bit further onto the edge there, but you can't really see the edge where the terrain, which is here in the middle, and the mesh where they actually meet, with the grasses on top of them. That makes it look really quite cool. Okay, and I think we will actually need here, if we want to drive here, the mother vehicle, and the mother vehicle even has some sort of car that it's lifting. We will want to make this slightly more ramp-like. And the ramps and things like ramps are kind of easy to do with Terrain Carver. So this uses just a normal primitive geometry component, as you can see here, and the primitive geometry component supports, well, primitive geometry, things like spheres, boxes, and the like. But the carver then uses that information to either subtract or add values to the height map. So now we can just carve, and you can see that it sort of cuts through the terrain. Typically you kind of start with this and then you go in and modify it. Now let's see, did we cut too close to the thing? No, that's actually kind of nice looking. What if we carve away that? It's pretty good still. Can we carve even more? We can actually. Interesting. Might be that at some point we kind of get too close. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to bump this up like that. Then I'll bring that back and carve that away. And let's see, did we get, yeah, we got a pretty nice and smooth plane there. Here you can see sort of the resolution of the light, not the light map, but the height map. We can see that this gets actually pretty steep pretty quickly. Take that and see if we can cut away a little bit more of the side there. It can be a little tricky to navigate here. That's kind of it's not supposed to be super easy. But it's not supposed to be just like annoyingly difficult either to drive the mother vehicle up here. How big is that thing again? I'll just add one here for reference. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. Might work. Yeah, I think it's quite okay that you can't really fit it from this side, because this is getting kind of narrow here anyway. So it's probably quite alright that you can't do that. And if we want to, we can even do like an upper terrace here with this cliff. Not sure if that will look good, but just stating that we can if we want to. Okay, so there's the carver. Now we can use the carver to carve or extrude probably like a ramp here. Like I think that the design here sort of calls for a natural looking thing. It's not supposed to look like a road. Be super obvious that, oh, there's a road that goes up there. It's supposed to be more like a natural place where you can just happen to drive. So let's be a little careful with how much we make this look like an actual road. Right, so we can carve like this, but we can also, if we move the camera under it, we can also just extrude, so you can just bring up the terrain. And this is obviously very handy when you want to make ramps like this. Extrude. And then just melt away a lot of the stuff actually. And here we got a little too excited perhaps. See if I record that and then I just bring up this corner. And then we do like a mega melt of this entire thing. You can see that we get a pretty nice and rounded look. Like so. And here I want to cut off this cliff a little earlier to make it just easier to drive there. So let's do that. And this is of course one of the nice things also with Blender Sync. We just get, this is the terrain that we added like 5 seconds ago. Already it's inside of Blender, and we can see what we're doing very easily. We can make changes very easily. Get sort of immediate feedback. Cut the faces away. Like that. Put another face there. Probably put another face there. Maybe we'll move those a bit closer to the front there. Something like that. Let's see, let's merge those two. And in my experience, you typically need a bit more. Geometry in these places. So let's add like one more there. Something like that. Something like that maybe. Let's see how that flows. Yeah, I think that's okay. Now this just looks very sort of abrupt. So let's do something about that too. We can maybe dissolve that guy and then just bring in one more cut from over there, right? And then extrude those a little bit, something like that. Get rid of the bottoms. And we can see what that looks like. That looks like that. Kind of boxy, but we'll go in and make it look more cliff-like later. And then we just continue to like smooth out all of this stuff. Oh, wrong brush. Wrong brush there. And now we can cut this a bit closer, because of course we added the geometry there, but we can now see that we did manage to cut a hole into it. There's now a hole here. So what do we do about that? I don't know yet. Let's figure it out. That's a bit abrupt. We can use a carver to fix this up, or we can try something like this and then melt it away. That seemed to have worked somewhat well. Let's get the carver back. And see what's what. A bit more. Right, so I am a bit worried that this side here is getting so steep, but I think we can probably make it look natural still. And we can maybe even build something into these supports here to make it look like just sort of like a concrete wall or something if we want to. I mean, that is something that they would have done to make this ramp sort of more supported, or sturdy. But yeah, now we can play a little bit and see what we have. So first of all, we want to kind of get an overall feel for this cliff here. It looks all right. Looks all right. There's a little bit of stuttering there. I assume it has something to do with my recording. Looks all right, but it's a bit blocky and it's a bit large, to be honest. I think I want to make some of these details quite a bit smaller. But the height is looking pretty okay. It sort of dominates the view now here, and it really shouldn't do it. I think the ramp up to the mountain should be the thing that dominates the view, but it's fine. We'll tweak it a little bit. Let's bring in one of these mother vehicles, and I managed to spawn it inside the ground apparently. And typically I just put a scout there, right there in the cargo pool. I should really make it so that you can spawn like a mother vehicle with another vehicle sort of pre-attached to the crane. That could be kind of handy. Right. Oh, and also that switching icon shouldn't be there when you're using the crane, but oh well. Things that can be changed. Right, so now depending on how much trees and rocks and things we put up here, this is actually somewhat easy to drive up onto. Now, of course, the crane is on sort of like the wrong side. If we want to lift that thing up there. Let's see if we can we reverse up here. And this thing is kind of ridiculous once it gets going. It weighs so much. Can we see? Can we reverse it up? Yeah, no problem. No problem. And I think we can probably reach the ramp from here with this, but I don't know actually. Might be a little tricky. Let's see. Can it reach it? Get the cable in. Yeah, it can reach it. No problem. But yeah, I might want to cut away this a little bit. And of course, this thing has like, I think these supports are quite long. They're pretty long, so we can actually, we can actually just cut away at this mountain a little bit. It doesn't need to be that close to the action. Yeah. All right, I got past the roadblock. Yeah, pretty sure the stuttering has something to do with with the recording. But, oh well. Okay, so that's cool. So what I'm gonna do is probably take another carver, or we can use this one that we have here. Let's bring it up. and rotate it like 90 degrees. And oh, that's not what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted to do. So try to match it roughly to, and it doesn't need to be more than roughly to the level, and we start carving away. I wonder if that was a bit too much. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe it was actually pretty good. Just carve away at this stuff. Carve away some more. Something like that. And here we want to obviously carve away at a slope as well, because this is like the ramp up to the side of the hill here. Just a bit more. And then we just go in and melt this away. Right, so here we can see that wasn't actually very long. So I'm gonna have to do something about that. Actually, that probably means that we don't want to, because we actually do have quite a lot of space here. So I'm going to only carve away around this place, and then maybe go a bit lower here, but not much. And then we'll go inwards a little bit instead, and then I will sort of carve and then probably extrude, right? Actually, let's extrude a bit further in. But we'll need to extrude it so that those supports aren't in the air, and obviously I can make them taller. That's not a problem. But there's really no reason why they would need to be that sort of that kind of changes the look of the side of the whole hill there. Yeah, I don't know. Let's extrude that for now, like that. And then go here and not extrude, not carve. And probably carve. Yeah, I mean, this doesn't look very natural, right? The ground sort of going in this angle, so we might as well just cut that away, I guess. Something like that, and then just melt that. Maybe we can melt this too a little bit. Something like that. Rid of some of this as well. Actually, yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll leave it as it is for now. Right, so that's a bit better. Now we should have a bit more chance of actually working here close to the mountainside. And this debris here needs something to sort of fall onto, so we want to be a little careful with what we cut away there. Okay. So that's that. Yeah, obviously this is not done yet, but I kind of don't feel like doing more cliffs right now. I've been doing it for like past 2 or 3 days. So let's do something else for a little bit. This is good stuff though, and I think it will work quite well with this. Once we have all of this decorated, it will look kick-ass. We have these scale mannequins that we need to put in here to remind ourselves about the scale of things. And as you can see, this cliff is actually pretty big. OBS Studio is doing something funky. Even just sort of from a visual perspective, we can't just have like one single polygon that's right in your face, and that's like 20 by 10 meters. I mean, the the look of the game is pretty low poly, but it's not that low poly. Maybe we have some. I mean, this right here is also pretty large, but it's pretty high up. And I mean, this cliff is not done yet, so that's quite fine. Anyway, we have this area here, and I figured previously that I would probably do this area. And I got sort of sidetracked while I demonstrated the Blender Sync system, and I did this cliff here instead, which was not a bad thing because this needed to be done. And now at least it is started. But I was sort of thinking that I might want to continue with this, right? We can see here pretty much this area is decorated. You can see we have grass here. We have some painted ground. We also have the road much more decorated than it is here. This is just sort of single colored and very boring. So probably want to do this next. And I don't know, do we want to do like this side? Do we want to do the road? What do we want to do? I was thinking earlier that I would put in a cliff here at this sort of corner over here, and I think we can probably use one of the ones that we have already, which would also be very nice because it would mean that I don't have to make a new one. What is that actually? Oh, that's the grass. Let's put in like a... I don't need to rename that for now. It can be what it is. So we have a few cliffs. All of them are essentially modeled for this specific area or this specific level. And we can see if any of them would actually fit here. This is... yeah. This is like basically not that mesh, but which one is it? It's this one. It's that mesh. It's kind of pointy. Not necessarily the one we want to put there. What is this? That's cliff number 3. Can maybe try a cliff number 3 here. It's pretty big. You can see that it continues actually for quite a while under the ground as well. But we can maybe just position it in such a way that it isn't visible all the way. Shouldn't necessarily be that that tall though, that high. How about that? Let's bring this mother vehicle a little to the side. Yeah. I mean, you can see that there's quite a lot of stuff here underground that's gonna go unused. Which is sort of maybe a reason to not really use this here. But it might still kind of make sense to have it. What about this one then? This is something that we could put like really here at the corner of this road. If we wanted to. The sun shines through it here because it doesn't have like a top side. You need to fill it with terrain if you want to use it. This might work. It's the same as this one. It might work because they're sort of facing the other way. So it's not super obvious that they are the same meshes. But it is, of course, still the same mesh, so someone might notice it. Not that it really matters, I guess. Does look kind of cool here though. Here at least we wouldn't be just wasting a bunch of geometry underground like in the previous one. I mean, these are instanced, so instance rendered. So it's not like the end of the world, even if we did render 1 or 2 triangles unnecessarily. But maybe it's nicer this way. Now we can see if we can. Oh, it's a bit heavy. Just melt away the terrain a little bit here. See what we get. And again, we could do this with a carver, or we can just do it manually like this. Both ways are good. I'm just going to cover that, I think. And then maybe cut out here on this outer side. Is that maybe a bit too close to the road? Probably not. I think probably not. If we want to, we can maybe move it just a bit further, just to be sure. Yeah, that is for sure not too close. So here the sort of critical path is essentially the most important thing from like a gameplay perspective. And so you want to make sure that you're not blocking off any part of that just because you have a cliff here. That would be stupid. Right, we can move it upwards quite a bit still if we want to. I don't think I want to. Instead, I want to sort of have it pretty low and then just sort of cut away around it, like I did previously. And have it that way sort of sit in the terrain in a natural way. Can do a little bit more of lowering here. Let's not do that. Can do this where we're only lowering. I think this is probably going to be the only cliff here on this side. This other stuff is going to be like open terrain. There might be like one of these big rocks or something, but no cliffs. We've had enough cliffs. And it is even possible that I'll leave this completely without cliffs, but we'll see. That might look unnatural. There's no cliffs there. Right, so here we need a carver for sure if we want to actually fit the terrain to this cliff piece. Just get one and again put it roughly where and how it needs to be. Like so, and then we can extrude, and we extrude the terrain up to onto that position. We need actually a bit more still, a bit higher. Extrude, extrude. And extrude. Something like that. A little bit more. And maybe just make it smaller as well. Extrude. Actually, I'm going to move it downwards a little bit. Carve and extrude. Yeah, that looks all right. So you can do like a 1-2 punch with this. You can do carve and extrude right after each other, and it handles both kinds of things. Carve and extrude. Like so. I think that is probably a good starting point for then just melting the excess terrain away. What do we have here? Here's a weird sort of hole or something. Let's see. Right, so we have the edge of the terrain right there. That's why that looks so dark, because it's like it's getting some kind of interpolated normal or something. So we just need to lift it up a bit further, and then we can again melt it away. So melt, 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 melt. Whoop. Nope. What about this then? Something like that. Looks all right. Right, and here you can see that, yeah, this is the limitations of height fields. No overhangs. So just take away that stuff. And you are inadvertently affecting this top side as well. So you need to carefully massage this until it does what you want or looks how you want. And again, the grass will come to the rescue and make these borders almost invisible later on. So that's nice. Oh, I smoothed it out so that it actually made a hole in the terrain. That's not good. Okay, so there is one cliff with terrain on top. Still need to fix up this terrain on the bottom side. And I'm not exactly sure how I want this done, but let's see. I don't want that done, at least. Let's see if we can maybe raise that ever so slightly. Something like that. Yeah, this sort of thing when you're like you're thinking about how a terrain should look. At least for me, it's like I don't exactly know, but I know when it looks correct, and I know when it definitely doesn't look correct. Sort of intuitively know that, okay, that looks like a place, and then when it's like that, that looks like a something else, not a place, not a real place. And that's not good. We can't have that. Right, the mesh actually ends there. No, it doesn't actually end, but it has this sort of I don't know what to call that, sort of like a terrace almost. But I'm not gonna show that, at least not right now, so we'll just cover it up like so. I think that's good. This road needs to be probably a bit more rounder. Now it just sort of runs almost straight here and just like a turn. I want it to be more round like this. So that's okay. And then this should probably have like a, this is kind of tight now here. This road is supposed to be smaller, like this is a main road, and it's one where you have this double gate and everything. This is supposed to be like a much smaller road. For example, the mother vehicle doesn't need to really fit on this road, at least like not very easily. So This can be tighter, but this looks a little too tight now, perhaps. So let's go and paint a little bit of road here. I think gravel is the material for this road, isn't it? Yes. So we can look at the width here, and it's probably 0.6, I guess. I'll just paint in a little bit of an intersection, a proper intersection here. Something like that. And I think here I'll start the curve a bit earlier. Make it run like that instead. And then just erase that. Something like that. And then we'll obviously have to, this is just painting the material onto it. This is not actually changing the shape, so we need to go in and change the shape then. But that looks better. Now we can actually turn off the fog for a bit. Makes it perhaps a bit easier to look at. Right. Yeah, I think the road is a bit narrow here in some places. This like large road is really just running around the refinery. You can't actually drive up onto the refinery with the mother vehicle, but it's supposed to run around this, so that you have sort of this cliff here as sort of like a landmark. You can see that cliff from almost everywhere in the level. Like if you go into this cave here, you can see it. But almost all places in the level, you have that mountain there, which you can use as a landmark if you get lost. And that's sort of that is a thing that is very sort of conscious. Now you can't actually see it, but now we have the refinery right in front of you. So it shouldn't be a problem. Right, so there's another problem here with this road, and it's the fact that it is kind of uneven. I think it's like until, well, this place that this junction here, as far as it is painted properly, decorated properly, it's pretty good, but then it starts to get really uneven. We can actually play it and see what it feels like, because that is sort of a pretty good indication of like, okay, will this actually work? And you can even turn on, let's see, how did I do it? This is probably not going to go in the game, but you can even turn on like cruise control. So you can see here, cruise control target speed is 100 kilometers currently. That's kind of weird. It only goes to 90. Oh, it is actually. Yeah, now it is at 100. Okay, yeah, there we go. Yeah, this controller is just really bad shape, actually. Yeah. Well, we can set it to something like 70, and we should be able to, like, pretty nicely be able to drive around. Maybe make it 80. Should be able to pretty nicely just drive around this. You can see here that it is pretty flat. And now we're coming down to the decorated area again. It's not supposed to be super flat. I mean, it's still a dirt road after all. So it can be bumpy, but it shouldn't be so bumpy that it makes it like annoying to drive. And I think now that we're passing this junction here, it becomes a little annoying to drive, to be honest. Like this stuff here, like a lot of bumps and things in the road. I don't know, maybe not. It's better than it used to be. You get a little bit of air time from some of these jumps and bumps. Yeah, there's a little bit of flattening out to do there. And of course, you don't have to drive on the road, and you shouldn't be afraid of air time or bumps. But the road should be pretty flat after all. If you want air time, you can just go up here and drive on these hills. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if this fits here. We'll have to wait and see when I get a little more decorations in. See if it fits there. But I think it might. I think it just about might. And one thing that I should probably keep in mind here is like the direction of these cliffs. Right, if you're like thinking of them, if you're properly thinking of how this rock has formed here, you have like these two cliffs here that sort of probably have kind of fallen off this plateau side here, right, and just sort of fallen down there and somehow been left standing there. Does that work with this? I mean, I guess if it works sort of on a level design level and a visual level, then it's probably good enough for everyone, really. But it bears to keep in mind that, again, if you see something and it doesn't quite look right, it just feels weird and people will notice. And we don't want that. Cool. All right, guys. I think I'm gonna end this stream pretty soon. Coming up on the 2-hour mark here. And I've been doing this almost non-stop now this entire week, so probably need to rest my brain a little bit. But overall, I'm pretty happy with how this is coming along. This is starting to feel like a proper place, especially if you turn the fog on. It's starting to look pretty impressive, this entire area, especially when you're considering the scale of it. It's actually pretty big. And a lot of this is actually quite fun to drive. So I think I'm onto something here. This looks a little crooked, almost like it should be sort of rotated, like somehow like this. And of course it is a little rotated, like in the opposite direction. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's really a problem, but it is a little crooked though. Might be perfectly fine that it is a bit crooked. Yeah, it probably is. Yeah, this looks kind of interesting when you have something here now. And you see this whole base there in the background. I'm going for sort of interesting, what should I call them? Almost like this sort of portrait places. Like look at the game and you go like, that could be a nice screenshot, or that could be a nice Steam store page image or something. Then you know you've done something right. If you can sort of find something that could work as one of those. Right. But anyways, I will end this for today. Thank you to everyone who joined. And if you have any questions or suggestions or comments, be sure to write them in the comments either now or in the VOD on YouTube later. And if you're interested in this kind of stuff, in this kind of content, then be sure to subscribe, because I do this semi-regularly, and I'm sure there'll be more pretty soon. Anyway, have a good one. Hope to see you in the next video. Bye.